everyone, I'm Dr. Hinson.
And I'm Dr. Donnelly.
And we're the Good Doctors of Abbey Research, and we are here with our Handmaid's Tale academic recap and analysis of episode 9, kids. 9, called Smart Power, which is a very interesting title. So I have a little bit to talk about, so I'm going to do the recap for us again this week, and then a little bit from my end of imprisonment and resistance. We did see some resistance in this episode. And then Dr. Donnelly is going to transform into Pastor Donnelly. She's brought props, kids. She's got the Bible. She's got the good book with her, so she's gonna talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff that we heard in this episode from a religious perspective. So diving right in, we start with June and her wonderful narration, which I missed, to be honest. And she's describing the Waterford house as if it were an Airbnb, which, you're welcome, we Googled this, was founded and established in 2008. So I really still think that it's like
2009, 2010.
I think it's like the economic crash. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that's what perpetuates this, like, now the world is over, or going to be over, it's the time for our coup. Yeah, I really think that's when it happened. But who knows? And just, talking about the house, and then says, some ritualized rape required. So, full June mode happening in her brain. And then she's kind of talking about really the boundaries of her imprisonment as she walks around. Her and Rita are summoned to the sitting room to see the commander, and there's a new guardian who we dubbed QB1 because he looks vaguely like a poor man's Scott Porter from Friday Night Lights. So shout out to Friday Night Lights. Is now going to watch over her because the commander and Mrs. Waterford are going on a trip to Canada. Serena is in the greenhouse tending to her seeds. Hint, hint. And Fred has the audacity to call her the attentive mother. Cool. Thanks. I hate you.
Yeah.
And he says, Canadians think women here are oppressed. Cough, cough, cough. So you have to come with me and show them that they're not. And you can see on her face she's really, thinking through, whoa, I have to lie to these people because guess what? We are oppressed. Yeah. Eden comes out, our dear Eden, to send Nick on his way with some home-baked cookies because she is 15. And is just continuously upset by the lack of affection that he can't give her, which I think is going to be a problem later on in their marriage. June's upset that they're leaving a bit. I think she has some sort of attachment now to Serena. And then we arrive in Toronto for the scene of this episode. Fascinating. They're greeted by diplomats. One throws some super shade at Commander Waterford, I really enjoyed visiting America with my husband.
And Commander Waterford says, well, soon we're going to have tourism again. You'd be welcome back. And the guy goes, when we're welcome.
I know. Yeah, tourism is going to be, what does he say? Tourism's going to be jumpstart our economy or be something come on, who's going to...
Come tour oppression camp!
What? Raise your hand if you would go tour Gilead. Yeah. Anyway.
Hope they include the Boston Globe offices.
Right?
On the hop on, hop off.
Next stop.
Here's our slaughterhouse.
Here's our ritualized slaughterhouse. So anyway, Luke and Moira are watching television. He arrives. This is the reminder that Luke does not know who has kidnapped his wife and is ritualistically raping her. But Moira does, and so she says, oh, that's Waterford. So Luke has, a name to a face. And they go to the American consulate, the seat of American government in Canada, and say, look, you guys have to send in the Marines. This guy's a war criminal. He's a serial rapist.
Yeah.
Get him out of there. And she's like, there's nothing we can do. Why don't you join the protests? And then we have Serena and Commander Waterford going through the town, and she's looking wistfully at all that was free America once. So that was really interesting. Then we have Janine and June having a conversation about the baby.
Oh, because before we forget, Serena told June right before she left that she was going to be moving to a new house as soon as the baby was born and was not going to be given the opportunity to wean her child.
Yes. So I forgot that part from the June and Serena interaction before they left. So June's very upset about this, wants to stay on, obviously, to wean the child after it's born. And so she's complaining about this to Janine, and they start having a conversation, and poor man's Scott Porter, the guardian, starts yelling at Janine and ends up hitting her. So that was, he's a real gem. He's a keeper, that guy. Janine resists and gets smacked in the face.
With a gun.
With a gun, yeah. And then June gets dragged away. So, dear old Gilead. Fantastic. We're back to Serena. She's had her day of activities with the attaché.
My favorite thing is when they handed her schedule, it was all in pictures because they knew she wasn't allowed to read.
Hey-o.
And that has to be the very first moment she ever had to face that, because the look on Yvonne Strahovski's face was like,
yeah, you don't get words. We're just gonna give you pictures. Meal, botanical gardens.
Yeah. Home. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I didn't even notice that. I was just so engrossed in what was happening. So there was this interesting interaction with the Canadian diplomat, the American diplomat, whatever. And Serena, as they're talking about what women are and aren't allowed to do and what Serena enjoys doing, and she lies about knitting, which we know she hates. She returns back to the hotel and has an interesting interaction with a woman and her daughter, where the woman appears genuinely afraid of Serena.
So we think it's possible that the rumor is either that Gilead snatched children or Gilead actually snatched children.
But even I think about it, technically Hannah was snatched.
That's true.
Her family, they took kids.
Yeah. So clearly this woman thinks that Serena's about to up and take her kid.
Yeah. So that was a reality, a wake-up call. So Serena does what a lot of us do when something upsetting happens. She goes to the bar. She orders a tall glass of Riesling and is very soon chatted up, as we would say, by a very handsome man smoking cigarettes, who comes over to the table, insinuates himself into the conversation. Serena presumes that he is somebody in the media, but he's actually a representative from the American government, to which she says, which American government? So we get a few tips about what's happening there. And he says, we could have you on a plane to Honolulu. We could save you. Mm-hmm. Your story would be powerful. People would want to hear your words. You could write them yourself, and we would publish them. And Serena pushes him off, says, no, why would you assume I'm not happy? Why would you assume I want to leave my home?
Well, she says, and why would you assume I would betray my country? And he looks right at her and says, you already did.
Hey-o!
And then I'm about to have a baby. Not your baby.
Not your baby. Everybody else at home, I want to know if you said it at the same time he did, because I was watching it, and as soon as she said, I'm about to have a baby, I said,
not your baby.
It's not your baby, which is exactly what he said.
Mm-hmm. My other favorite bit is at one point she said, all you've offered me so far is coconuts and treason.
Coconuts and treason, I know.
And then he tells her that the American scientists, because at our true essence, the American experiment is a hotbed for innovation.
Innovation, yeah.
They figured out correctly that the fertility crisis was with the dudes,
not the ladies.
And so they've made lots of strides, and she could have her own child, which is, she says, I'm expecting a child. Yeah. Not your child.
Not your child. She could have her own child. Yeah, so I mean, we all figured that there were problems with male sterility.
Come on.
Commander Waterford. It's not one-sided. Obviously, it wasn't women's sinfulness, because that's just silly.
And also, all the wives of Gilead have to know it, too, if it's not that uncommon to have your security guard. Because, that wasn't a creative idea Serena had. That was something that was done a lot.
She knew somebody else that had to do that so that there could be a pregnancy in the household. So all of this is offered and rejected by Serena, although you can tell the wheels are turning. The seeds have been planted in there of the potential of what she could have. She's already seen it outside with women working and wearing trousers or pants.
Kissing somebody who actually likes them.
Oh, being in emotional relationships. So all of this stuff that she's seen while she's driving by in the limo with her horrible husband. And he leaves her with the cigarettes and the matches, which she takes.
The hot diplomat, not the horrible husband.
Yes, obviously the hot diplomat leaves her with some cigarettes and some parting words. So then we're back to June, and she's starting to really get upset about what's going to happen to her baby if she's not there to watch over her. She believes she's a her.
Everybody else calls it him, and she refers to it as her, which is one of my favorite
favorite things. Yeah. I want my daughter, I want my child to be happy. And so she brings Rita up to her room, our dear Martha, and asks her to be the godmother, effectively, to watch over the child. She says, I want my baby to know kindness. I need to have someone kind in her life. So she's starting to plan for the eventuality that she might not be in the household and be able to watch over the baby. And so we start to see people showing up to protest Commander Waterford when they return to the hotel, including our boy Luke. Fist pump Luke in the crowd with a picture of him and his wife and his child. And he runs up and he confronts Commander Waterford. And he says, Waterford, I'm Luke, and I don't...
You raped my wife.
You raped my wife. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know you. I don't care what Commander Waterford said to him because it was all bull crap.
I care, and I'll tell you in a little bit.
Well, he uses some biblical justification for Gilead, so that's important to Kristen. But what Luke said to him was, you remember my face, I'm going to remember your face, and someday this will all be over. And so he says, and then Waterford quotes the Bible at him, and they whisk him away. Nick is clearly very upset to see the picture of June and her past life with her husband and her child, and he ends up seeking out Luke in the bar, which was one of my favorite scenes of this whole season.
Because there is still goodness and kindness in this world.
So good.
And he loves June.
He loves June. So he walks up to Luke. Luke recognizes him as a security detail. He says, I know June, she's my friend. She's fine, to which Luke says, which he's already said in this season, she's not fine.
She's pregnant.
He
and
tells
it's
her,
Waterford's.
Yeah, and he says, is it Waterford's? And he lies, and he says, it is. So he calls them monsters. Luke gets very upset. He says, get out of my face. And then he runs after him. He goes, wait.
Tell me more.
Tell me she's okay. What are you doing here? So Nick, our boy Nick, took those letters to Canada. So exciting. Hands him the letters. June gave these to me a while ago. I want you to have them. Get them out. We all know what's in those letters.
Yeah, and he insinuates that June, like, he essentially takes himself out of the narrative.
Yeah.
And says June wanted you to have these.
June wanted you to have these.
Which is, like, again, I mean, just the beautiful... Nick feckin' loves that woman.
Oh, I feckin' love Nick.
Yeah.
And so then Luke tells him, tell her I love her, tell her I'm never going to give up on her, and tell her Moira made it out and Moira is safe. So all of those very important things. And he won't stop. He won't stop until he finds her again. So that was lovely. Then we're back to Gilead. Aunt Lydia is measuring June for whatever. They're checking on her. She gets into a little trouble over the guardian beating the crap out of Janine, because of course it's June's fault. And then she tells June tells Aunt Lydia about Serena's plan to have her out of the house, which Aunt Lydia is visibly upset about, but maintains character and says, well, that's her prerogative. And then we get to see why June is so upset about leaving the baby in this household, because she says, in my experience, any man who would beat his wife, implying then that this baby is not physically safe in the Waterford household, which, to be honest, folks, it might not be, especially if Commander Waterford, if that baby comes out looking anything like Nick, Commander Waterford's not going to be happy. So, gets Aunt Lydia to promise to look after the baby. We know Aunt Lydia's going to do it because she would do anything to save a child, and admits that she was a godmother in the way back time, and that her sister's child died, but it wasn't my fault. So Kristen had to tell me what that was about because I missed it. I'm not so great at context. Was reassuring her that she's a good godmother.
And then we get the 3 best scenes of the entire season.
Yes. So Luke and Moira and other girl, I can't remember her name, are reading...
Formerly silent handmaid.
Are reading the letters. And Moira's like upset. She's like, oh, I wish that package of letters was C4, something to make Gilead go boom.
And I'm like screaming at the television. I was like, words are more powerful than dynamite, you numpty. And
it
turns out,
other girl says, this can go boom.
Mm-hmm.
So in the morning, Commander Waterford and Mrs. Waterford are met by the Canadian attachés
in like wall format,
politely kicking them the F out of Canada.
Permanently and forever.
Bye-bye. See you later. You're no longer welcome here. There were some letters that released online. They've gone viral. So Waterford calls it propaganda. Yeah.
Because that's what fascists do. They call testimony propaganda.
Yeah.
And Canada looks right back at him and says, we believe the women.
We believe the women. Ooh!
I had to pause to yell really loud.
Yes.
I was very happy.
We were very happy by that. We were very happy. So then we start to see the signs outside with people's names on them, which I will get to at the end. And then at the airport, massive people surrounding the car. It has to get through all of these people screaming, beating on the car, throwing things at the car. And Moira, with a sign that says, my name is Moira, walks up to the car, pounds on the window, and says, it's not Ruby. And then I think she swears. And Waterford is shook. Waterford is like, oh, I know her. I know her from that fake brothel that I used to go and pretend it was okay to rape women because it seemed like they were prostitutes. So people are upset. They get on the flight. They come home. There's a group at the house party. In Canada, where Moira and Luke are. Everybody's kind of celebrating the release of these letters. And Moira announces that their flight has left Canadian airspace. And then everyone starts singing America the Beautiful, which I started crying. So really potent, emotional stuff from north of the border. I think you're okay with the time we spent with Moira and Luke this time.
Yeah.
We're back at the Waterford household. Serena looks upset at all the teal-colored clothes she has to wear, and takes out the matches and throws them in the fire.
It takes a woman an average of 7 times to leave their husband after he beats her.
Yeah, this is gonna be slow. This is gonna be a slow burn for our Serena. The seeds have been planted. She wasn't gonna immediately, jump on the resistance bandwagon. We've already seen her do it this season. So given the right justification or motivation. And Nick goes to June. And tells her,
I swoon.
I know. I met your husband.
And he loves you.
And he loves you, and he's never gonna stop. And he wanted me to, I gave him the letters. The letters got out. They made a difference. She is, just give Elizabeth Moss the Emmy for that emotion.
She processed everything in
on her face, and
about Moira and Luke are living together. That's going to be ridiculous. They're going to kill each other. Like all of the very human and this bookend. So her opening monologue talked about how there's no point in having hope in the impossible.
Yeah.
And now her closing monologue, she realizes that the impossible has happened.
Yes, because Moira got out, and that's what she says in her internal monologue. Moira got out. The impossible happened.
Has happened.
Nick, bless his wee cotton socks, has decided that he cannot separate June from her family anymore. He was upset by that picture that Luke had. He is upset by how much Luke loves her and realizing the damage that was done by Gilead. So he is going to leave June alone, I think, from now on, evidenced by the fact that he said, I love you, and then kissed her on the cheek. Oh, it got me. It got me in all the feels. And she thanks him for bringing him that. And then at the end, she says, Moira was Hannah's godmother. It was impossible for her to get out, but she did it. I know I should accept the reality of you being born here, but fuck that. So that was the episode. There was a lot in it. Really quickly, what I have to add to this, obviously the significance of names and the women's names being held on all the signs. Again, calling back the first time June saw those letters, she read all of the letters, and we got the voices of those women and all of their real names, not their Gilead names. So I thought that was such a beautiful part of symbolism for them to stand there with the names. My name is Ava, my name is Moira, my name is, whatever your name is. Claiming their individuality and their sense of self was really powerful. And then we see June kind of in this weird space where she seems like she might be unhappy to leave the Waterford household. But this just reminded me that even when you're incarcerated in a space, you can still form attachments, even to that physical space sometimes, if it gives you comfort, if it gives you a sense of something that you know or something that you can trust. She knows she can manipulate Serena. Nick is the only person who looks out for her, and Rita. Rita cares for her, and she trusts her. So all of these things are significant. So I think we see that throughout the episode. She's realizing that her time in this house might be coming to an end. And she doesn't know where she's going, and that's scary. So that was really significant. And then the moments of resistance that we had, particularly the letters, which is the big one. Nick risking a lot to get those letters out of there, and to get them to somebody who would find them. So the resistance is happening in small ways, even though that blew up in a big way.
It's extraordinary acts of ordinary courage.
And it's happening with words, everybody. It's happening with words and love. So that's my end, real quick, things that we saw going on in there. Pastor Donnelly, over to you. I closed my notebook so you can open your Bible.
So, two main themes. The first is at one point when they're in the greenhouse with Serena and Waterford, he mumbles a couple verses from Proverbs 31. Mm-hmm. Proverbs 31 is known kind of as the woman chapter. This is quoted a lot on Mother's Day and grandmother's funerals. It is really, really misused to talk about keeping women in their place in a certain way. And there's been lots and lots of work done about how, in fact, it's not that at all. And essentially what it is arguing for a woman as an equal partner in the household.
Oh.
So some verses, a capable wife who can find, she is more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She is like ships of the merchant. She brings food from far away. She considers a field and she buys it. With the fruits of her hands, she plants a vineyard. These are all things that she is the provider of the household. All this, like, head of the household junk. Like, she's the beating heart. And it ends with, her children will rise up and call her happy. Her husband, too, he praises her. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her a share of the fruits in her hands and let her works praise her in the city gates. None of that is happening in Gilead.
No, Lord, no.
And none of that happens she rises while it is still night and provides food for her household. She's a woman who gets shit done. And this chunk of verses has been used for many, many years, especially since the feminist movement birthed in the 1960s, to shove women barefoot and pregnant back in the kitchen. Because they did not do the exegetical work to actually understand what all of this meant to ancient Israel. They just took this and created it, much like Gilead does. Mm-hmm. So, when Luke confronts himself...
He who shall not be named.
He who shall not be named. Ironically, the brother of he who shall not be named.
That was good. I just got that. Funny. Funny. Harry Potter references. Hopefully you get them. If not...
Luke says, you raped my wife.
Yeah.
And Waterford says, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And Luke says, again, you raped my wife. And Waterford says, remember your scriptures. So I would like to read a passage that Waterford should remember. Ahem. This is from Matthew, the book of Matthew, which is included in the scriptures they claim to love, even though they ignore it. So again, chapter 25. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on the throne of glory. And then all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another like sheep from goats. The king will say to those at his right hand, come, you that are blessed by my Father, and inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For when I was hungry, you gave me food. For when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will say, we're now paraphrasing, when did we do that? Never saw you. And he essentially says, truly I tell you, just as you did this to the least of these who are members of my family, so you did it for me. He will then turn to those at his left hand. You that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry and you gave me no food. For I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. For I was a stranger and you did not welcome me, naked and you did not give me clothing, sick and in prison and you never visited me. Then they will answer, Lord, when did that happen? And he will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it for me. And they will go away into eternal punishment. Hi, Gilead. I'd like you to remember these scriptures. The entire narrative of the Bible, as I have said many times, is one of welcome, one of hospitality. The sin that Sodom and Gomorrah committed in the book of Genesis, where they got turned into salt and burned and blah, 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 that's for lack of hospitality. That's not for anything else. The entirety of Scripture is about welcoming the stranger, welcoming the immigrant, welcoming the children to their families, protecting the orphans, protecting the widows, protecting those without resources. The righteous are those who serve. The righteous are those who sacrifice. The righteous are those who love. Those condemned to eternal punishment are the ones who separate the widows and the orphans from the resources that could help them. They're the ones that deny food and water. They're the ones that ignore the prisoners. So, remember your scriptures, Commander Waterford. May I invite you to?
Yeah, and on that very serious note, we are the good doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Hinson.
I'm Dr. Donnelly, and we live in hope and in love.
We do. We will be back with you next week for episode 10.
In which we think the birth happens.
We're not sure. We watched the preview earlier. Some stuff goes down. We've got 3 episodes left.
Better be a girl.
It better be a girl, right? Comment below with your thoughts, comments, questions, and concerns. We love having this discussion with you guys. Take care of you and yours this week, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.